Okay, that's good.
Okay.
So we're here in San Diego. Is this San Diego or what is this?
This is the city of San Diego.
City of San Diego. It's my first time here. It's beautiful. Feel like it. No homeless people. Seems like a very residential area here.
Perhaps not in this particular part. So this is Del Cerro. I chose this place to live because it's right across the street from a really top-rated school. And so this is actually the only apartment complex in that school district. If you keep going and look at the other houses, those houses are really good-sized houses. So it's really, this particular area is a really solid middle-class area.
Expensive area.
Yeah, it is.
And so they go to public school?
Yes, they do.
Public school.
Yeah.
It's interesting that in terms of choosing where to live, your priority is to choose a district that has a good school.
Yes.
And what do you mean by good school?
I looked at many different factors. First factor I looked at is the good school rating. So this one is consistently rated 9s or 10s. Another thing I looked at is I visited each school that I was thinking about moving close to, and I wanted to make sure they had plenty of grass to play on. His last school was Foster Elementary, the same district, really not too far from here, same kind of neighborhood, but they didn't have any grass to play on. So when he would do, for example, soccer shots after school, they'd play soccer shots on the blacktop or in the sand. And I feel like kids need to be able to play and have grass to play on and feel free and not worry about bruising their knees, or if Damien is playing with a kid and they fall down, I don't want some other kid to get injured or anything like, and have everything be exaggerated. So that was the next thing. The third thing I looked at was recess and lunch times. There's certain schools that have very short recess or lunch times. And that's not good because kids, especially like my son Damien, they need lots of time to play. They're under the care of this elementary school, and it's really important that they get lots of physical play outside for physical health reasons, to help them regulate themselves. I mean, I believe kids have a right to fun, and so those were probably like my top 3 things. Another thing I thought about is
the curriculum. Did you look at that?
I had no idea. I moved here, it was several months before the pandemic hit. He was finishing his 2nd year of kindergarten. She was still like preschool. I had no idea that curriculum was an issue at all. I just had no idea. I thought that, just choose a good school and read to them every night and help with them with their homework, and it should be okay, right? And I didn't realize that that was far from the case.
So now you pay attention to what they're being taught in school?
Yes.
What are some of the things that stood out for you? Is there anything that you wouldn't want them to be taught? Are they taught about gender, race, all these things?
I really don't know. I don't exactly know what they're being taught. I would say the first thing that I realized that the schools were not teaching was the ability to read. So I had to teach him from the ground up, and I taught him how to read. Yes.
What do you mean they're not being taught to read? Like they don't have it as part of their curriculum, or?
The way that schools everywhere teach, they teach based on many different strategies. For example, they're reading a sentence. Well, look at the picture. What does the picture tell you? Or what's the first letter of the word? Try to guess. It's called, I believe it's called balanced reading. What I heard is like around 30% of kids that are taught this way, where they're just basically taught like, okay, I'm going to read a story to you and you can just guess. About 30% of kids can learn to read pretty much no matter what, as long as they're exposed to reading. For some reason they pick it up.
Yeah.
But then there's a large percentage of children that they need more than that. They need like phonics, for example, and this is what I learned with him, because I was trying to teach him to read by I put words all over the house, because this was after the school shut down. I thought I need to teach him how to read, and I put words all over the house, and then I would say, this is what that says, this is what that says, And then after that, I would say, hey, Damien, go ahead and guess what that word says. And he wouldn't know, even though the item is right there. And I would say, Damien, sound it out. And he acted like the words were Chinese. You know, like he knew what the letters were. If I say, what letter is this? But number one, he was only able to identify 80% of the alphabet. And number two, if you saw that letter in the middle of a word, it was like a letter that just got lost in a bunch of words. So I had to teach from scratch. I basically taught him how to sound out every single word. And then I learned that there's a bunch of combination sounds like C-H-E-R. You have to teach him how to sound out those combination sounds. And there's so many different rules you have to teach. Like, for example, when a word ends with the letter Y, that Y is pronounced E. When a word ends with the letter E, you ignore the E, and, you know.
Oh, so, that's a good point.
So that's how I did not even realize how hard it was to learn to read. So when he was going to school, the teachers were like, oh yeah, he's doing just fine. I have no concerns. They never told us that, guess what? No, he's not really picking up the skills. And so it was really hard because I realized that he had symptoms of ADHD. He had a really short attention span. So I really focused on teaching how to read. At first, it was very challenging because he didn't want to do it. So I had to use a variety of techniques to encourage him to do it and to basically tell him that you're going to learn how to do this. So I used a variety of techniques to teach him how to read. Within a few months, he was able to read like Dr. Seuss books. And then eventually I had to teach him how to write, which is a totally different animal. And
you did all of that after work?
I had to,
like in the evenings, or did you not work?
When the pandemic happened and the school shut down, that was March of 2020. And just before that, I was having all these issues like daycare issues and other things that I was worrying about, and I don't know how I was going to deal with it. So in a way, that school shut down was a little bit of a miracle, and I got to stay home and not work. But I was able to get
so your
unemployment. I was able to get unemployment. So I was off work on pandemic leave, full pandemic leave, for over a year. And then when I got back to work, June of 2021, I got to come back. I convinced them to give me half days. So I worked half days for 6 months. That was wonderful. And then after that, I was working full time, but then I still sometimes had to take time off because of different things weren't completely resolved with the schools and pandemic and just different issues. So I had all this time off, and I dedicated that to teaching him reading, writing, and then I taught him basic math skills. I taught him started with counting with his fingers. First grade comes around, that's when he's doing distance learning because pandemic, right? And I thought, he's all set. He's good to go. I'm never going to let him get behind again. And what I realized is that when the teacher was trying to teach math, she wasn't really teaching math. She was teaching all these like weird strategies, like almost like it wasn't direct teaching. And I was thinking, when is she actually going to teach him how to add or subtract? You know, and he started to get behind. So even though he was doing all the homework.
But was he the only one, or was it other children as well?
First, you have to remember that I don't know the grades of the other kids. I'm going to assume that there were many kids that also struggled. But he started to get behind. And then by the end of his first school year, he definitely got behind. He was getting, it could be C's, D's, F's on the test, the math test that she was giving him. His writing was going backwards. His spelling is going backwards. And luckily, I still had some more time off. And so I used that to get him caught up. And what I realized is the reason why...
Yes. Oh, wow. You're a jumper. You're going to be an athlete. Sorry.
What I learned was the so-called math that they were teaching was called Common Core math. And so it was
What does that mean?
Common Core math was something that President Obama passed, and what it was supposed to be was a set of standards that each state could meet, so that if a student moves to another state, then at least the standards are consistent with each other. That was the big idea. So there were many, I believe Bill Gates was in charge of, I believe it was Bill Gates, and a few other people were in charge of developing these standards. And they had a vision of what math should be, but the problem is that, well, they instituted obviously certain kinds of state tests, and in these state tests, I'm just trying to think of the best way to explain it. The idea was they want students to understand math in a more abstract way, in a more general way. But really what they did was just take out the fundamental math skills, where they're not necessarily learning to memorize, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. They're going to teach all these different strategies. But what happened was, like, every time they taught a new strategy, just when I thought he understood it, then he has to start over. So they spend all this time, the teachers were spending all this time teaching to the test and not teaching fundamental skills. And there was Common Core started to be more enforced, like maybe around 2013. I think it passed 2010. And
but why? What was the problem before?
Governments are always trying to improve education in some way. And I'm sure that President Obama wanted to make his mark, and no one really realized how damaging it would be. When parents started to see the curriculum, they were hitting the school board meetings. Like, before there was CRT, there were parents hitting the school board meetings and complaining about this. And so I started to feel desperate, and I started to look around and contact different charter schools and find out what are my options, because I was telling his teacher, why can't you let him do math the vertical way, where he's like, 10 minus 5 equals 5, and she's like, oh, they don't let kids do the vertical way until 5th grade.
What?
And just hearing all these things, and I'm like, oh my God, because at first I thought this is just 1st grade.
Yeah.
This is just this teacher. She's just not a good teacher. And then I realized I cannot keep putting Damien through this for 12 years. This was causing him so much frustration.
Yeah.
It was making him feel extremely frustrated, making him feel stupid, making him feel like he can't do it. He didn't understand. And I would be like, Damien, but didn't they teach you this in class? And you did your homework. Damien, why can't you do it? And sometimes he would just cry. And I just knew that if I kept giving him 12 years of this stuff, he's going to develop an anxiety disorder. I was like, I'm not doing this to my kid, And so I just searched charter schools. They all go by Common Core, one way or the other. And obviously we can't afford private school. So the decision I decided to make was I bought a whole set of textbooks, math textbooks. Because
from before
yes,
2000
in 1997, the state passed these California standards, and what happened was when they looked at the students' test performances, you could see that they were going up after the 1997 standards were incorporated, and you could also see that the gaps between performance gaps for minority groups was also starting to close. 8th grade enrollment of algebra, which is an important benchmark, was also improving. But then when you see that once it gets to around 2010, 2013, when Common Core got implemented, then that increase kind of slowed down a little bit. And so that's one way. Okay, so my son has an IEP because he's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And initially, when he first went back to school after all the things that I taught him, the people on his team were very impressed. They were very surprised, very, very happy with his sharp progress. They were saying things like, oh, I wish, when I was talking about all the things that I did for him, they're like, oh, I wish every parent did that, which in my head I was thinking, yeah, why don't you pay me? They shouldn't be expecting parents to do all that work. And they said, yeah, and his writing skills are so great. We were just going to have him draw pictures.
This is crazy.
Just to think that's what they were going to do with him at the pace that he was at.
Yeah.
Would I realize that because of his, I would say his ADHD symptoms, and because of the school's lack of commitment, he was never on track to learn to read. He wasn't going to learn to read. He wasn't going to learn to write.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to learn how to do math. And actually, the majority of kids who take these Common Core state tests fail them. So it's just a combination of that, as well as some of the research that I did that made me realize that, because there are a lot of schools that are not teaching the science of reading, and obviously Common Core it's for the whole state. So all public schools have to teach by Common Core standards, including charter schools. So there's really no escape.
What are parents who work full-time supposed to do, who don't have time to
they don't know
their kids at night?
I wouldn't have known, and that's in part the school shutdowns in a way was a blessing because I was able to intervene.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to. What would have happened is the teachers would have still said, "Oh yeah, he's doing good, he's doing fine, no worries. Yeah, he's a little bit behind other students, but don't worry, that's because of this." And then we would have had to maybe third or fourth grade do a serious intervention. By then he would have been behind. When you do math in second or third grade, you have to be able to read what it's asking you. Common Core is big on words. Like they gave a sentence where you have to understand what to do, and then you have to respond using words and sentences. So, and then every class you take is based on reading. He would have been behind on everything. And now when sometimes Damien feels like I overwork him, and that's not very fun. He wants to do more fun things. And I would say, but Damien, how does it feel when you're in class? And I would say, you know, how does it make you feel when you're in class and you know how to write your sentences or you know how to solve the math problems? And he's like, oh, it makes you feel good, smart.
Yeah.
And I asked him, how would you feel if the teacher asked you to do a math problem or to read something and you didn't know how to do it? And he said, oh, I'd feel sad and mad. So
Damien, do you feel you're smarter than other kids?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yes, a little bit.
But anyways, those are my biggest concerns. But there were other things that that schools are teaching children that I had no idea about and had no concern about until I digged into the Common Core, because the same groups of people that were advocating against Common Core, the same parents back then that were called, oh, soccer moms, like what do they know?
Yeah.
The same groups of people that were advocating against something called critical race theory. And at first, when I was hearing about that, I was like, that's not really my thing. You know, those Republicans are just getting a little bit overzealous, a little bit over patriotic. You know, that's not really a big deal. But then I did start to learn about what they meant, like the specific concepts that some teachers are teaching their children, that I did find to be worrisome, because I feel that sometimes it's taught in a divisive way.
Like what?
There are various books that and various materials that could be used that are try to say that if you are white, then you are automatically racist. That's a racist doctrine in of itself, because you're basically saying that because of your skin color, you have lower moral character. It often sounds very religious, because sometimes children are taught that because Americans of the past who had white skin were slave owners, then that means that all white people of today have to answer to the sins of the past. I think there's many good aspects of it, but it's also the way that it's taught, and there's a lot of truth to it, and a lot of things that should be taught. But at the same time, I think what happens is there's so many different ways that a person can be oppressed. There's so many different barriers that a person can have. But when it comes to critical race theory, what happens is it becomes superficial, because then the first thing you think of when you look at another person is their skin color. You don't think of like, oh, you don't think of class, you don't think of religion, you don't think of differences of income or their family situation or other things. And the first thing that kids are taught to look at is their skin color.
And they're also being taught how to treat people with different skin tones. This is how you treat Asian people. This is how you treat Black people. That's what DEY programs are about. When I was working for a tech startup, we had a DEY class, mandatory, and we were taught how to treat our colleagues based on skin color. So this is how you approach a Black person. This is how you approach an Asian person. Crazy.
Another thing is that sometimes they have them read books that makes purposely is trying to depict police officers as willing to kill someone based on their skin color. So, for example, there's a book called, I think it's called Something Happened in My Neighborhood. I forget the name of it.
Yeah.
But basically, there was this fictional story, a Black person had gotten shot by a police officer. And so the wording that was used consistently in this book was, he was shot just because he was Black. And
so it's teaching Black kids to be afraid of the police. And
I think it can be, that depends. And I think the most worrisome part of it is that as a parent, you don't really know exactly what your teacher is teaching. Yes, you can. If there was more do you want to get the water yourself? Okay. Like if there was more transparency, I think it would be easier to manage, but you just have no idea what they're teaching. So you don't have a chance to talk to your own children about it.
How would you do that then? How would you bring more transparency to the formation of the curriculum?
That's really challenging. I think that I think the best way to do that is to advocate for a well-implemented school choice, along with school transparency guidelines that all participating schools should follow. This way, it's not necessarily a ban on those concepts, but at least parents get to choose. So, for example, I would wish that every school that you're interested in going to can post on their website, this is how we teach gender, this is how we teach race, this is how we teach these particular issues. I would love for a website that says this is how we teach reading. Specifically, this is how we teach reading, this is how we teach math. This way parents can make an informed choice ahead of time.
And right now, to get this information, can you request it from the administration, or are they resisting?
Well, I already know that they teach Common Core, and I already know now how they teach reading. One good thing, though, is that there was a recent law that just passed, I think maybe around a year ago, where now teachers are required to learn the science of reading. So that's good. So I'm hoping to see a lot of improvement with the way they teach reading. So I don't think there's transparency with reading necessarily. You're just basically told this is how we teach, and the teachers say, oh well, we're the experts in education, so why would I listen to a soccer mom or a mom? That's the general attitude. The way that it can help is teachers need to be able to teach. They need to have that flexibility. They shouldn't be micromanaged, and at the same time, teachers don't exactly want to be forced to teach a particular ideology that they disagree with. However, they do experience pressure from teacher unions as well as their own employer to either teach a certain way or to adhere to certain ideologies, whether it's transgender ideology or I don't want to say critical race theory, but basically teaching theories based on race. They're supposed to adhere to certain ideology, otherwise they can be
fired.
They could be fired, or they could be where they're just like shamed, where other teachers or the principal are saying that they're ignorant or they need to be taught again, or they're subjected to the teachers have to go to these. I know that the San Diego school district.
Oh my God! Thank you so much.
Had their teachers go. I don't know the right words, but they had their teachers go to a certain session where they were given this presentation about
It's called water.
full of theories that.
So your body
Where were we?
I think you were talking about curriculum, science. Oh, teachers having the choice to teach how they want to.
Yes, they.
So do you think there should be a standardized curriculum, some type of curriculum that's not what it is now? Or would you remove
Regarding which topics?
Math, reading, basic skills.
I would love.
Or would you remove standardization and let schools
drink
choose?
some cold water.
I would love for the state of California to reinstate our prior standards that we had passed in 1997 and just kick out Common Core. That's really difficult to do because a lot of the Common Core concepts, it's hard to get rid of those things. Ron DeSantis, he eliminated Common Core and reinstated their own Florida standards.
So states have the power to choose which standard they want to follow.
They do, but it's controversial. So a lot of people on the Democrat side, they're not inclined to do that. But every time they.
But how come? If they look at their children, they can't read, they can't do math, they can't subtract or add. How do they not see that this type of teaching is not working?
It's a political issue. It's a political issue, and it's like people that are on the higher up. People in the education field don't really want to listen to the people that are complaining about Common Core. They tend to just say, oh, those are just right-wing people or just suburban moms. What do they know? You know, we're the experts of education. And the bottom line is they don't have to. They don't have to. It's what I've realized, and like I hate to say it because it's so negative, but I feel like our public education system is a scam. They give you just enough to keep you going, but they're not completely doing their job.
Yeah.
So, and they don't have to.
And
that nothing pushes them, and that is one reason why we need a carefully crafted school choice policy, and it needs to be where you're allowed to send your child to a school that doesn't have Common Core. That is one engine for change, as well as it has to be coupled with some basic transparency.
But then if all public schools have this curriculum, where do you send your kids to? If you don't have the money for private school.
Then with school choice, the basic idea is that the way it is now, of course, is if you enroll your child in public school, then that public school will be reimbursed for thousands of dollars for every single child per school year. So if there's school choice, then that money follows the child. So the parent can say, okay, I'm not going to give you that money. I'm going to take this money and I'm going to choose this private school. So now public schools are incentivized to change. They're not incentivized to change. They don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
They got you. Our kids are their cash cows.
I wonder what will happen 10, 20 years from now, where these kids will grow up.
We are in the 10, we are in the 10, 20 years from now.
Delicious. Yeah. And then these kids will be applying to universities, which will have to lower their standards.
Which they already have. Yeah.
What do we do with it? We need a third party.
Yeah, we do. So there's obviously, I would say education is like the biggest thing. I would say that's the biggest issue. But obviously there's other issues that started even before that they were enrolled in school.
So the education issue started, you said 2003, where the curriculum changed?
Well, it's always been changing, but in terms of the Common Core curriculum, that was passed during President Obama's time period, and it became, I think it started to become implemented around 2013.
Okay, so 10 years.
Yeah, and most of the states implemented it.
So the kids that started on it are still in school. They're gonna finish up high school in a few years.
Yeah, and there's been grade inflation. So you may have a student where they're getting an A or a B, but really when they get tested, there's a discrepancy between their grades and their testing scores. And then they're going to colleges and they have to take more remedial classes to even catch up. But either way, the biggest issue is that they're not teaching basic reading, writing, and math skills. And I mean, that's their job. Like, the final straw is when I pick them up from school and the kids are like, I'm hungry, can you feed me something? And I'm like, didn't you eat lunch? Like, no. And I'm like, they don't do anything, I had to do everything.
What do you mean they didn't have lunch?
I don't know. They give lunch. I don't know what happens. Maybe they just don't finish the lunch or something. I don't even know. But that's like the final straw. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, if they're 5
they
or
even
6.
banned tag. Okay, they don't have
What's
don't have plain tag. Chase. Plain chase or tag.
Like a name tag?
No, like plain tag.
What is that?
Like hide and seek.
Oh, okay.
Okay. They ban tag and they don't have swings in the main play area.
Why?
So that's
Only kindergarten does.
Yeah.
Why?
Probably because they say it's too dangerous, you know?
Hide and seek?
Yes, at
What?
school, playing chase and tag. So
Julia,
so he would
do you have lunch at school?
Yeah. Wait, not lunch.
Just snacks and Cheetos? Why don't you eat lunch at school? Your mom pays for it. Do you pay for it?
Not really. It's free for now.
Free.
Everyone's getting free lunch.
So why don't you eat lunch at school?
It's because I did not have real food, only snacks in my backpack. That's why. Because Dad put only just snacks and Cheetos.
Well, you're supposed to have snacks in your backpack, but then you have a cafeteria in school that's supposed to give you lunch.
But if someone has food, then that means they don't need to go to the cafeteria if they already have food.
We like to put lots of snacks in their backpack, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that means that they're just not going to the cafeteria and getting their lunch because they think, oh, I have snacks. I really don't know.
So, okay,
and then when I learned that like they're not even getting that much physical play every day because they're not allowed to play chase. There's no swings. A lot of times he's just sitting there. He's just sitting there eating his snacks, not even playing with other kids.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the hell? They're not teaching reading, writing, math. He's not getting his physical play in, and they're not even eating their lunch. I mean, what the heck are they doing all day? I have to squeeze all that in my own personal time. It's like having a third job. Now, to be honest, in this past year, I've spent more time than I wish I had on learning about, like, getting involved with third parties and getting involved with the discussion groups and trying to share information. So I need to get caught up with all our part-time homeschooling, and that is what I call it. I call it part-time homeschooling. So what really is the reason why children are doing good, and the reason why this school is doing good, is because it's a high middle class area. It's because if you've gone to the open houses of these houses, these are not modest 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. These homes are like 4 or 5 bedrooms, nice backyards. My point is that you probably have to be a 2-parent home for this area.
Lucy, do you want to play pet?
Later, we'll just finish
There's
up
the
and
difference
then I'll play.
between
Yeah?
the difference between this school and Foster Elementary, which had a little bit lower scores, was that Foster Elementary had higher percentages of children learning English as a second language. And Foster Elementary had much higher percentage of children that are enrolled with the food stamp program. Like I think foster, it was like 60% on the food stamp, and here I forget what it was. I don't know if it was like 10 or 20%. So what that tells me is that this school is full of kids who have mostly two-parent homes, who are not immigrants or not having issues learning English, have lots of resources. So schools are simply relying on parents. This is like to me, this is like an open secret. You know, when you complain about oh, the schools are not teaching kids to read, sometimes the replies I get on social media is, yeah, but that's the parents' job. My parents taught me how to learn to read. I knew how to read everything by the time I went to kindergarten. Yeah. So it's like, basically, so you're basically admitting that teachers are schools are not teaching. That's the open secret. Schools are not teaching. They're relying on parents to do that. Parents are doing the teaching, and that is why some kids do better. Or private tutors. But if you can, private tutors, after school tutors, or other resources. But guess who are the type of families that are going to have the hardest time to manage that? Yeah. Single parent families or low income families. So that's the reason. It's really not complicated about why there's certain groups of people that have a harder time, who have children who have higher rates of failing school or lower rates of academic success. It's not magic. It's because the schools aren't teaching. That's why. And it's not because of a learning disorder. It's not because of their race. It's because I would say the schools, they have your child all day long, 5 days a week. I think in California, on average, they're getting about $2,000 per student per month. If you had $2,000 for each of your kids, do you think you could find someone that can teach them to read or write?
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you know of any teacher in their school who complains about this? Or are
not necessarily? Not necessarily. There's a few teachers that I like to follow on social media. Someone named Kali Fontanilla is someone who used to be a teacher in California. She moved to Florida, and now she decided to speak out against what is typically referred to as critical race theory. And she eventually set up her own online homeschool. And so that's one teacher that has spoken out.
I see parents are increasingly homeschooling their kids. Those who can afford it, of course.
I used to think that's just crazy. Like, why? I used to think, why are you martyring yourself? You know, school's free, you know. But now I kind of understand that a little bit more. But obviously, for most people, homeschool is not possible or even ideal for that particular family.
Yeah, I just can't imagine what will happen in like 10 years when these kids will enter the workforce.
I do not want to wait 10 years. I don't exactly know what to do, but my mind is just perpetually spinning. There's so many other issues on my mind that I've had to deal with. But yeah, I just feel like I don't want to wait. So my mind is constantly spinning. I spend more time thinking about it than I just need to do something and get more organized. And I need to clean my house. That's the first thing. I really got to clean my house. And then
because we've been chatting on Twitter, and you sent me so many good resources on abortion as well.
One thing you'll notice about this apartment complex is there's no grass to play on. And even when they play outside with other kids and they're running around, then the neighbors might complain. So that really sucks. When I was a kid, I lived in a condo, but there was plenty of grass. So you would just, if you wanted to play with the kid, you just go outside. Yeah. And there's other kids. That's what it was, which I'm sure was easier on my mom because she could be inside, do her thing, and then call us in whenever, whatever. But here, I can't do that. I can't be like, okay, yeah, sure, go outside and play with your friends. There's really no place to play around here.
But is it pretty safe?
It's a relatively safe area. So that's good.
Yeah, at least
I wanted to choose an area that I mean, I kind of boxed myself in because, like, if I wanted to move from here, the only other option is those expensive houses over there. But I chose this area because I think it's a really central location, and I don't want to move too far away. I wanted them to, because I had to move when I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I had to, you know, get on with friends. So I thought this would be it is a good area for them to grow up.
That would be mine. This could be yours.
And hopefully they won't go too far, move away too far.
No.
I hope,
It does not work.
you know, one day I can get a house, but I really don't know. We pass by houses all the time. We love looking at open houses, and we just dream.
So you live with your husband?
No. We are separated.
They're separated.
But we do sometimes do like family things.
Wow.
So that's complicated.
Were you married, or you
Yeah,
were married still?
yeah. We were married. Technically, we separated in 2018.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to go through all the details,
Yeah.
but
Why did you decide not to divorce?
Try this.
The litigation process was the family court process was really, really tough. Actually, he was the one that kept taking me back to court and filing motions and complaining and lying like crazy. And it's terrifying having to deal with those lies, all the vicious lies, all the time. And he never even had to prove anything he said. Like every lie that he said on his narratives,
Yeah.
I had proof that everything. I had to go out of my way to gather proof of everything that I was saying. Whereas he could say one thing and then not prove it. So it was a lot of work for me. It was very, very scary.
So you reached an agreement outside of the courts.
And at some point he said he wanted to reconcile. I mean, this is why he still had his family court thing going. He said he wanted to reconcile, and he says that he loves me and wants to be with me, and just all of a sudden just saying all these nice things and getting me flowers and chocolates and Diet Coke too, and I mean, really almost like a prince.
Yeah.
Like he really does love me, but he also has narcissistic tendencies. He's a liar, and he loves power more. That's the way I define it. I know some people say, well, if he's narcissistic, he doesn't really love you, but just the way that I experience it, that's how I describe it. Is that he loves power more.
Yeah.
And to the point that he also gets extremely jealous for like no reason. So he loves power more, even if pursuing that power
breaks up your marriage.
Hurts people. Whether it hurts me, he also does counter parenting. So if I try to do one thing, he tries to undermine it and tries to put me down in front of the kids.
And
that's how things escalate. That's how things escalate. And also, like I said, he's extremely jealous. So there's times when he, yes, Damien? What the heck? All right. Okay. So there's times when he like someone's talking to me or send me a text message or on social media, and he just starts battering me with questions and accusing me of talking to someone else. And in the very, very beginning, and also at one point he made like quasi-suicidal remarks. Like, for example, he was in a motorcycle accident a long time ago, and he would say, oh, sometimes I just wish that I died in that motorcycle.
Oh, God.
But at first, when he was acting jealous and saying, like, wondering if I was talking to someone else, at first I thought, oh, no. I would say to him, oh, no, I would never do that, you know? And I would show him, like, look, these are all my messages. Like, look at all of it.
Yeah.
Look, these are all the emails. You can see. No, I would never do that. But that would not
wasn't
satisfy
enough.
him. And if anything, he would take one thing and then blow it out of proportion or try to twist it around. And so what I realize is that when he's going on this tangent, there's a difference between, because I do believe that cheating is abusive. It's psychological abuse. But there's a difference between someone who's genuine and asking, you know, if you're talking to someone or if there's something going on, versus what he's doing. So when we were married, and you know, he's gone for hours, and then he gets home and then he gives me a story like, oh, I'm sorry, this happened or that happened. I usually chose to believe him. Because why? Because the idea of the truth is so hurtful that as a defense mechanism, you just choose to go along with that.
Yeah.
Whereas, and he wouldn't show proof, right? He wouldn't show text messages or anything like that. And he always had passwords for everything, right? Whereas in this case, I am like, please, like, look, no, you know, look at all those messages, I'm telling you. And not only that, but it's the difference is that he's pursuing that belief, because the way he has been since Damien, my son, was born, is that when he likes to cut me down, and he likes to argue, and he likes to say these remarks to cut me down and make me feel lesser of a mother. And we get into arguments, and what I realized, the pattern is that he's not saying this to solve a problem.
Yeah.
He's saying it just to cut me down. He's saying it because he wants me to feel shame. And so it starts to get a little bit scary when he start like if he were to start battering me with questions. And there's also been times when, like, if he calls me and I don't answer the phone, we have the same phone service. He will look up where I am, and he will come find me. So if I'm at home and I'm not answering the phone, he will come over and ask me why I'm not answering the phone, and just to make sure.
That's crazy.
Okay. Or if I'm not home, I was driving and I drove into a parking lot. I was just like listening to a song.
Yeah.
And I was just enjoying a song.
Yeah.
And he located me and he drove next to me.
But how can he locate
because
you?
I didn't answer the phone.
How can he locate you? I don't get it.
He can locate my location on here because I'm on his phone service.
Well, you have to
So
get
I've gone to this point where
you have to get out his service.
Where I've just gone to this.
Is he paying you?
Listen, he's paying for the phone service.
But for the kids?
He's not paying child support.
He's not paying child support?
No, he's not. We can get to that. That's like I said, that's a second thing. That's another issue. But
why don't you take him to the court?
Okay. Pause on that question, and I can answer that. Okay?
Yeah.
Because it's terrible. It's terrible. There's certain things about family court and child support that I had no idea how bad it was. Mm-hmm. It is really bad and dysfunctional. They're not there for families or for children or for women. That's a short story. But I can give you a specific answer to that, so you really know how bad it is. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Like, I'm realizing that when he's asking me these questions, like for example, I was on the phone and then I purchased something at a store or whatever, and I think it was a mail clerk. There's an older mail clerk, and I'm walking out, and he's on the phone. He's like, hey, I have a question. What? Do you trust me? And I was like, no, not really. Yeah. He's like, yeah, because I don't trust you either. And he starts battering these questions with me, and I start to realize that, number one, he wants me to feel shame.
Yeah.
And number two, he's using it as a manipulative tool to control me, to get me at the mercy of his feet. And number three, it feels like he's setting me up. It's like he wants to get angry at me, and then what's the next thing? Like, if you really thought that someone that you cared about was cheating on you, how would you feel like you would want to do? You know, especially if you were a male, you might attack that person.
Yeah.
So he's never hit me. He has in the past when we were married. He has pushed me or grabbed me, been physically aggressive. He has done that, and it was usually regarding something with the kids, but he's never hit me. But when he starts with this questioning and for nothing, it does make me feel like, oh my gosh, this could easily turn into a situation where he really wants to believe this. He really wants to set up, and I'm the one doing these nasty, vicious things. And what if it turns to something else where it turns violent? I don't know. I really don't know. So I just tell him. I don't know, baby.
Just a few more minutes, okay?
I've told him, listen, I don't want to be with anyone else. I promise you. If ever you think that I'm with someone else, that's not true. And I tell him, for the rest of my life, I promise I'm not going to be with anyone. I want him to know that. That sounds very crazy. If I were to write down those words, it sounds like I'm trying to be romantic. I'm not trying to be romantic. I'm trying to.
It sounds like he's trying to take away your freedoms.
It's called I mean, and I learned there's actually a name for it, and there's someone that I follow on Twitter. His name is Andrew Sichetti, and he talks a lot about coercive control. So that is what I'm going through right now, and I don't exactly know what to do.
Okay, do you want?
So what happened with the courts?
What's your name again?
Lucy.
Lucy, do you want?
In a bit. We'll just finish up, okay?
You know, the first thing about family court is, if you've never had to deal with that, you probably think that family court is where one person is going to file a motion, everyone goes to court, the judge looks at all the evidence and all your witnesses and listens to you and makes the best determination of the case. And the reality is, number one, no judge has the time to look at that. They probably look at your case for 15 minutes.
Wow.
You know, you don't even know if they read your narrative. They don't really.
But do they generally side with the mother? If they're not that familiar with the situation?
If you have evidence that you have been, let's say we were separated for a long time, and I had evidence that the children were living with me most of the time, then that would work in my favor. Or let's say you were just boyfriend, girlfriend, and you were never married, and you have evidence that the children were living with you most of the time, then that is going to work in your favor. But increasingly, men do get, what happens in family courts is, the short story is that men are, okay, do you ever notice that when you have a mom and a dad, and a dad does something that moms do every day, and they get a lot of praise? So it's kind of like a bias of low expectations. So if a dad is there in court and saying, oh, I really want to be with my kids, and I love my kids, and I want to see them, and she's not letting me see them, that comes across as very believable. They're given credibility. Whereas when you have a mother that's saying, yeah, we live together, but I did most of the work, I did most of the caretaking, which, by the way, is verified by studies. Study after study shows that mothers tend to do most of the child care, even when both the mom and the dad are working full time. Even when she's working full time and he's unemployed, the mother still spends more time with for childcare than the dad does. But the problem is that is not given weight. So it's easier for a father to basically verify in court that he's a loving father and should get 50-50 than it is for a mother to continue getting primary custody unless she has lots and lots of evidence. And also what happens is, in the court process, you have to meet with a mediator, but that mediator is for like 1 hour. They're not looking all the facts. The mediator does not read your narratives. The mediator does not read look at your evidence. They're asking you questions. The mediator is just going off of what you're saying. She makes a recommendation. The judge usually just rubber stamps it. So that's one thing.
So
okay, the second thing is that the father anyone can easily file a new motion to modify the custody the next day if they wanted to. Okay, so our separation started because I filed a restraining order and was awarded a temporary restraining order against him. And then we went to the actual domestic violence hearing. He had a really tough lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer. So we made an agreement. So he agreed to give me primary custody of the children. And we agreed to different things. We also agreed to have an exchange monitor, someone who would be there when he or I would pick up the kids to make sure that there was peace between us, that there would be no more, no violence or bad things happening in front of the kids. The exchange goes peacefully. That was hard because that costs hundreds of dollars every single month, and I wasn't getting child support. So we came to that agreement, and then shortly after, that's when he found out that I had applied for child support. He immediately filed a motion to modify the custody, and he was seeking 50-50. This was within a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. This was within a few weeks of us having an agreement, okay? And then we had our child support hearing. In the child support hearing, which was set in September, they increased his custody, because the thing is, in family courts, they highly value 50-50. So I may start out with primary custody, but after that, it's his game, because every time he goes in, as long as he's showing that he wants more time, a lot of the times they're going to get it. It's no risk to him. There's no risk for him to file a motion. If he gets, he's more likely to just keep on getting more custody. Mm-hmm. So they increased his time. It was still pretty good. I still had primary custody. Like he had visitation twice a week, mm-hmm. and then every other weekend. So it was like, okay, I thought this was it. And then 6 months, we kept on having child support hearings, because what happened was we went to the child support hearing. Yeah. He was working full time, making $30 or $35 an hour. I forget, maybe 32, something like that. Okay, working full time. And I was working mostly full-time as well for the county. And by the time I went to the child support hearing, mm-hmm. it took months to get to that child support hearing. And he didn't pay me any child support at all. Nothing to help with child care. I had to pay for child care all by myself. It was really, really hard. So the judge said that he actually tried to pull a fast one. But anyways, the judge ordered that he needs to pay me $1,000 a month, which I think is... Well, to me, it's kind of a lot. Okay. And in my head, I was thinking, you know what? I knew, because of my experience with my dad, like, I knew that wasn't going to last. I knew at some point he's going to sabotage his job, and I'm not going to get anything. Yeah. So I knew at some point I was going to tell him, look, let's just make an arrangement. You can pay less child support than that, and let's just finalize the case, okay? But what happened a few days after, he lost his job. So my understanding is that he spent so much time preparing for these cases and on the phone with his lawyer and preparing these declarations that was 90% lies, 90% bold-faced lies. Yeah. That his employer didn't like that. So
you don't think he planned it?
No, I don't think he planned it. I just think he was full of vengeance. He absolutely did not want to pay. He just pulled so many games. He pulled so many games. He did not want to pay child support. Very close, yes. Damien, okay? So he kept taking me back to child support court. And they kept getting, I forget what you call it, but it's extensions. I kept having to go back to child support court. And he started threatening at child support hearings and on his narratives that he was threatening to take me back to family court again. So 6 months after, remember, we made the agreement after before the domestic violence hearing, and then the judge later on at a new hearing that he ordered increased his time. Within a few weeks after his time, because the judge ordered that it be increased like 6 months from there. So like at the hearing in September, October, we kept the same schedule for 6 months, and after 6 months, it increased. Yeah. Right. Within a few weeks of it increasing, he filed. Okay, remember he told me that, oh, I love you. I want to let's get back together and all that stuff. And I said, I don't know. And he even, like, on my birthday, he sang me this, like, love song. We Belong Together. He wanted, on Easter, he kept begging me, let's hang out. And I was like, no, you know I can't do that, no. But finally, I just gave in, and we hung out on Easter at the park.
Yeah.
I thought that would be safe. Meanwhile, he's still talking to his lawyer, and he files a new motion because I wasn't automatically, like, saying, oh yeah, I'll go with you. He filed. So that was just a few weeks after his time already increased, and this time he was trying to get full custody.
Oh wow, full custody?
Yeah, he was trying to get full custody, and more lies. Once again, it's always just lies, lies, lies. There's other things going on, like his lawyer sent a request to do a discovery on my financial records, which was a lot. I didn't have a lawyer, so I was like, cool. So I did the same thing that his lawyer did, and I sent another one back. Okay, I want your information too, because let's do this. Let's get this over with. But so they were disputing that, and we had a whole bunch of different motions we had to go through in hearings, and it just made me sick. It made me sick to get this in the mail, and I was like, why are you doing it? I'm like, the date you signed it the day after was my birthday when you sang that song, and then eventually he said that he would agree to, fine, let's make an agreement, but he was kind of teasing me with it. I don't know if I want to go through, like, all the details there, but
can I just know what the agreement is?
We have a marital separation agreement. I do still have
primary custody.
Yeah, like, what eventually happened is that he kind of tricked me, because he keeps saying he loves me, and I'm like, okay, you love me and you want me to talk. I'm not going to talk while you still have an upcoming hearing in process. This is litigation abuse.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have this discussion with you when you're still pursuing this nasty litigation full of lies. And I was like, if you take that off the table, then we can have a discussion. But I felt like I'm not selling my body to you. I'm not agreeing to anything. And in the end, I had to sell my house because of all the bills that I had. Remember, childcare was an issue. Because of childcare, I couldn't pay for a lot of bills, my credit cards. Everyone was after me. And I even had liens on my house. And I couldn't pay my mortgage. I had a notice of, I forget what it's, notice of intent.
How much more time?
Almost done, sweetie. I received a notice from my mortgage. I was under threat of foreclosure. I had to sell my home. If I didn't sell my home, I could lose all the equity that I had, or I just had to sell the home. I just needed to sell the home. So I had to sell it, but it wasn't, he said, oh, I can help you with some of those things, because he knows construction. He knows he knows how to do all those things. So he's like, let me help you with a few things. Yeah. And I just want to help you. So he started helping with a few things, but then it's taking longer for him to finish. Oh, oops, I need a tool. I'll come back tomorrow. And then sometimes I felt like, I with the words that he's saying to me, because I thought the least I can do is agree to at least a few family gatherings, so at least I can show him that I'm meeting you halfway, you know, that. And then he was supposed to cancel he told my lawyer to write up the marital separation agreement, and he was going to say, he told them, let's keep the same schedule we had before, okay, and do, like, we're going to decrease the child support, and we're going to have that, okay. And time's going by, and I'm like, when are you going to, like, we already sent you the agreement. When are you going to sign it? When are you going to talk to your lawyer about it? And he just keeps wasting time. And finally, he changes his mind, and he decides to continue to pursue 50-50 custody. So we had to go through that hearing again.
Oh, God.
It was almost a disaster. The judge, once again, increased his time. I think I was lucky, because I still have primary custody. It's really like 65%, plus he gets to have half holidays. But I still thought after that, pretty soon it's going to be over. He's going to run out of money. he's running out of money. You know, we can get this settled. Let's divide our property. Let's get this signed. Let's get this finished and just get this done and just have peace. But what happened was he was able to, number one, he was able to convince the judge at a new hearing that he should get some money from when I sold my house to pay for his lawyer because he didn't have anything. So that told me that it's never going to end because I have this money sitting here that he can just grab. It was never going to end. And the other thing that I found out, which is getting back to your question about child support. Did you know that if you have 50-50 custody, if one parent makes more income than the other, the higher income parent can pay the lower income parent child support?
Oh my God.
That's a regular thing. I've seen it happen before, where I was in a courtroom, and this mom is like, she's paying this dad $1,000 a month. They probably had 2 kids with the same income situation as me. She has income and he doesn't. He's just sitting there. And she's like, I'm telling you, like, he has the means to get money and blah, blah, blah. And the judge was like, I don't have any reason to believe that he's lying. You know, he just needs to report the jobs he's applying to. And I'm sure he'll let us know when he gets a job.
This is crazy.
Okay, that was 50-50. Did you also know that even if you have primary custody, I make more income than him because he's unemployed. He could take me to child support court tomorrow, and I would be ordered to pay him child support, even though I literally have primary custody of the children, and he has a history of domestic abuse. I can be ordered to pay. I did the calculations. I go to the calculations. I could pay him. I could be ordered to pay him like $800 or $1,000 a month in child support.
This is ridiculous.
So that's one of the ways that he's able to, among other things, like control me. So we went back and forth with this agreement.
So eventually you signed a marital separation
So
agreement?
so he doesn't pay child support. He covers the car insurance. However, little did I know, he does not pay for he only pays the liability. So if I get to a car accident and my car is damaged, I have to pay for all the damages. But his car is fully covered. I didn't know that. But anyways, he's paying for our car insurance and the phone. I'm paying for all of our health insurance. So their health insurance, my health insurance, and his health insurance. So that's
how much
one
time
of
do you get with the kids? 65, 35?
It's, if you look at the schedule, it's 65%.
How
but
much longer is this?
almost done. Almost done. But the way that child support does it is that they also, if you split the holidays, they count that in the calculation. So they would probably count it like 60-40.
Yeah.
But still, he could easily take it back to court. And I've argued back and forth with my lawyers, like, how can that be? Oh, he's claiming he's disabled. I'm like, he is not disabled. Why? He needs to send proof that he's disabled. I was like, I have seen him. He goes on hikes on a regular basis, and he carries the kids on his shoulder for periods of time on uneven ground. He rides his bike when he goes hiking sometimes by himself. He's even carried me when I broke my foot. He carried me part of the way over his shoulder to the car.
So he wants spousal support, basically.
No, he doesn't want spousal support. So that was one thing that at least, like, and that's another thing, is that he could have got spousal support from me too.
But he wants to try to help you.
No, I wanted to try to help you. See, and then the way that he does it is like now, by him not paying me child support, he says he's doing me the favor. He's doing me the favor. So it's complicated. It's complicated. There's a lot of things that, you know, but that's one of the, there's a lot of things.
So it's not a finished story. He could always take it to court again.
Yeah, and I could say, oh, well, he's not disabled, he could work. It's very rare for a child support court to, what's the word, impugn the other person's income. It's rare. It's rare for them to do that. And even if they did, they'd probably just impugn it in minimum wage, and I would still have to pay him child support. And I have primary custody of my children, and he has a history of domestic abuse. So there's a lot of, like, things. My mind is just all the issues that I've gone through, dealing with the cost of childcare, dealing with the education system, dealing with the family court system, And also learning about other issues, how women's spaces are being targeted by far left people, not being able to use our own language, like using the words women or women or men. We need to be able to. You want to go inside the house, Damien? Okay, thank you, Damien. You've been waiting very patiently. Can you bring the iPad in, Damien? Okay, thank you, sweetie. In order for us to advocate for issues, whether we're talking about domestic violence and saying it's a gendered issue, or we're talking about child care issues, family issues, a lot of these are gendered issues, and it's difficult to advocate for those without being able to use the right language. And I feel like women, we are constantly, men do not like it when women we're just describing our own gendered reality and advocating for the problems that we face. They just say, oh, we just hate men for saying that. I'm just describing my gendered reality. That was an issue years ago. That's always been an issue, but now it's worse. So I feel like that's another important issue. So all these issues, and then trying to talk with Forward Party, Common Sense Party, to advocate for those issues. It's taken a lot of time from me and energy in my mind. Deal with issues. It's constantly spinning, but it's really important for me to speak out. There's just so many other things that I've gone through. But
I admire your courage to speak out because it's not easy. There's people who don't because they get harassed, they get bullied, they get fired from jobs, they lose friends.
But at the same time, like, I know I'm spending too much time on it. But on one hand, I think it's important. And it may seem like I need to spend less time doing that. I really need to really need to get back to the things that I was doing before, which is part-time homeschooling them and doing more fun things.
I agree.
But I just felt like these issues are important, and we need to fight against them right now. Like, I don't want to wait 10 years.
We don't have time.
I don't want to wait 10 years. And the other thing is, other people don't really know. They don't really know how bad these things are.
I agree.
And it's just overwhelming. Like, there's so many different problems that I keep facing. It's like a layer, and it's really affecting my health too. I'm type 1 diabetic. It causes a lot of toxic stress that I don't know. I don't know.
This is ridiculous. Like, it needs to be dealt with right now.
Yeah, one way or the other.
But thank you for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. And I learned so much. I didn't know all the issues with education and now with courts. It's a messed up system.
Well, as you know, I've created different fact sheets and different really cheap videos. There's various fact sheets that I've made. Like, there's fact sheets that I've made about the family court system, with links. So I've also made a fact sheet about showing that women, we are both biologically and socially inclined to be the primary caretakers of our children. Other fact sheets about some of the issues that we refer to that can give you more details to help back you up on those issues in case you're talking about them or you need data or proof of things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's gonna take time.
Yeah.
We have to get into power first. But
we have to what?
Get into power.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. The most important thing is being able to get your voice out there, and I feel like I do sometimes feel like our voices are getting squished, decentered, or dismissed, and so that's why I feel like being able to talk about these issues and having people listen that's like the most important thing. If we can get that far, then I feel like that's already progress.
We need to reach out to other parents and tell them what's happening. Because, as you said, most don't know.
Yeah.
You tried.
I'm kind of, well, I mean, I don't talk to other. I follow different parents groups, and I pay attention to what's out there, like looking at the news from my phone or going on Twitter, seeing what's going, like what's the word on the streets, or there's different organizations I follow. There are various women's organizations I follow. One thing that these women's organizations just accomplished is they recently passed something called Peaky's Law in California. Oh, there's other things you need to know about family court. Okay.
And you should start writing as
well. The thing is, when I write, how do I know if someone's really going to read the whole thing? Like, you know what I mean? But okay, so did you hear about what's his name, Danny Masterson, who was from that '70s show, who just got convicted of rape for 2 women? No. Okay, Danny Masterson is an actor, and he just got convicted of raping 2 women, right? There was a 3rd woman, but her conviction, that one didn't go through. Yeah. So his friends, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis,
oh, yeah, I think I've heard about
they each wrote character recommendation letters to the judges to ask for leniency. And the biggest thing that stuck out to me is how they said that he's a good parent. He's not a danger to children. He's not a risk to children. And if you separate him from his daughter, that could cause more harm. That could cause harm to his daughter. And so a lot of people think, like, you know, that's a fair thing to say. What people don't realize is that attitude that they have is a pervasive attitude that lots of people have, especially judges. So what's happening in the courtrooms is that women who their child was molested or abused in a major way by the dad. And even when there's findings of abuse or there's strong evidence of abuse, the father is saying, she's alienating me from the child. I love my child. I can't be separated, harming. And so the argument is that, the pervasive argument in court is that separating an abusive father from a child is more detrimental to the child. And so a lot of times the judges will still give the father parenting time, even if he's had a history of sexual abuse, or maybe he wasn't convicted of it or had those findings, but there was lots of evidence for it. Because in family court, they use all these kinds of devices to try to disprove or dismiss what the mother's claim. And so when her claim isn't fully believed, and he comes up with a claim of parental alienation, that gets more credibility. What's happening in courts is that accusations of abuse is given less credibility than the credibility of a parental alienation. And what's happening is there's a high percentage of fathers who are getting, when they claim parental alienation, there's a high percentage of fathers that are getting custody of their children. Many people say, oh, when women claim abuse, that helps them. But actually, a lot of times, when you look at studies and statistics that I have in my fact sheets, it actually hurts her case. It hurts her case because she's perceived as slinging mud and alienating the child from the parent. So in the majority of cases, in a high percentage of cases, when he's claiming that he's being alienated, the father is more likely to win, even when there's claims of sexual abuse. So anyways, Peaky's Law is something that what happens is abused children were being forced to reunify with abusive parents. So one thing that Peaky's Law did was it says that abused children are not to be forced in reunification camps with the abusive parent, among other things. And so that passed, I believe, the Assembly. It has to pass the Senate, and I presume that Governor Newsom will pass that law. And I'm hoping that more litigation can pass, or not more litigation. I'm hoping that more laws can be passed after that to help with the family court situation, because the family court is driving division between parents, and all it is, it's just money for the lawyers and the judges. That's all it is. Those are the only one. No one is winning in family courts. Yeah. Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's a good way to wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of this.
Okay.
And edit it and publish it. Hopefully the forward party, the forward party will notice. Put it on their website.
How about when we get inside, Julie? I can relax you, okay?
Or whatever you want.
I want my ice
We can
cream.
go to the supermarket. Yeah?
Yeah.
You do?
Huh? Yeah, I'll take them.
Oh, okay.
It's okay with you.
Yeah.
Damien,